Masechta Zevachim, the above Amud Aleph, 15 lines to the top, starting from Ibailahu. In fact, the Yimana is the Shaila about these kachim that were Makar Shalei Lishma, Kipra Al Mashabo. Were they forgiven for that sin that they designated, separated the covenant for? Oiloi Kipru. Oh, they were not forgiven for that sin. Meaning, we know that they still have to bring another carbon, but we want to know, does it help to protect, like by Asham Tali, from punishment? Is this sufficient enough to be a kapara to protect them till they bring the right carbon? It's reasonable to say like Kipru that they were not forgiven. The Isal Kadai to Kipru, if you're gonna think that they were forgiven. So Sheni Lama Huba, why do you have to bring a second? Why are you machliv to bring a second carbon? Because if they were already in the skaba for the first carbon, so why would they bring a second carbon? Obviously, the first carbon that they shech the shalei lishma is not mechaber. It's not mechaber, and that's why he has to bring a second carbon. Elamai shalei kipru. So what's the pshat shalei kipru? Lamahu karev. Why is he being mock of this first carbon if it's not being mechaber? Since if the shech the shalei lishma it's not mechaber, why do we continue with this hakrava? This is what was the kasha to him. If you're going to say that they're not forgiven, so it's understood. So that they're not forgiven. So why are they being makar to kabanis? So he says, "Shaloi lishmai mekayich lishmai," because the first carbon that they shech the shaloi lishma is coming from the kayich of the lishma. So since it's coming from the kayich of the lishma, so therefore you just tell them to continue and finish the carbon, even though it's not going to be a kapara. But since he already was magdashit lishma, and then he had a mind shaloi lishma, so he should. Therefore, we say he should continue. Why does he have to bring the second carbon? L'chapa, pashat and l'chapa on the sin, because the first one was l'chapa. Eli Yamid Kipru. But if you're going to say it was a kapara, the first carbon, so sheni lama. Why does he have to bring the second carbon? He was already in this kapara. So how is it possible to say mitchila that you magdish this carbon amanas, not amanas that it should be a kapara, but you just bring magdish? So we have to say, like we said, that it's not mechaper, but we say it comes mekoyich lishma, since l'chatchila he designated lishma, and he had a mind shalei lishma. So mekoyich, the beginning, he continues with that carbon, finishes it, but he's not mechuper, and he brings the second carbon to be mechapa on the aveda that he had done. The Gemara is the shaila has lacha afrasha mechapra. Does ha'ila is mechapa on a bunch of assays, and even alav shanitim la'asay. So this oila is a mechapa on assay that happened after he already separated the carbon. Since b'shas hakrava he was already over an aveda, so should it be mechapa even for those avedas that happened after he separated? Or it doesn't. Says the Gemara, do we say the hava achatos, so that we should compare to achatos? Ma achatos the kin afrasha in la afrasha lay. Just like by achatos that before, only those avedas that happened before he separated the achatos he'll forgive, but any avedas that happened after the hafrasha he's not going to be forgiven. So too, in this case by the oila, we'll say whatever happened, or any avedas that happened before the afrasha, it's mechapa, anything after it's not. Or the malay dami lechatas, or perhaps it's not even similar to lechatas. The chatas are called chet v'chet, by lasich, the chatas. Because by chatas, for every separate sin, he has to bring a carbon chatas. And therefore, if he separated a carbon chatas for one sin, and now another sin happened after he separated, it's not going to be mechaper for another sin. But here, by the Oila sins, even if somebody was over many mitzvahs, one Oila is mechap on all of them. He doesn't have to have a separate carbon for each chet. So I say the la'achafrosh not mechaper. So perhaps maybe I'll say that it'll be mechaper even on a say that happened after the afrasha. Says you want to tell Shema, come in here and I'll answer you from the B'raisa. It says v'samach yodei al reisha geilam. So you want to tell Shema, come in here and I'll answer you the subject. It says in the pasuk v'samach that the kohen should place his hand on the head of the oil with nitzor, and it will be accepted and forgiven. The leaning of the hands on the animal's head, we know the kapara is only through blood. Like it says in the pasuk, that the dama nefesh, meaning that the ika kapara is in the blood. So how do we say over here that the smicha of the on top of the carbon, on the head of the carbon is b'chaperes? What does it mean that he leans his head and he's forgiven? And with the Braisa, that if he treated the smicha like remnants of a misa, not as the importance of the misa, and he didn't do it, the Torah considers it as if he wasn't forgiven. But he is forgiven. My love, the chippah say the kelim afrasha. He said that not the pshat that he's forgiven for all those assays that he was over before he separated the carbon. But lo keeper asay the smicha. But on the asay the smicha which happened after he separated the carbon, he's not going to be forgiven. Why? Because it's asay that he was over after he already separated the carbon. Amarava. So Rabbi slugs up the raya. I say the smicha gamrit. You're saying I say of smicha. Shiny awesome day is different. The kol kamer leishachid. As long as he didn't check the animal, but Amid was smicha, still he could say he's still in a status that he can do smicha. So Amos kahavi asay. So when is this asay? Meaning whenever he wants, he can do it. He can always say, "I'm ready." You know, as long as it's before the shechita. He wasn't able to asay because he could always fulfill the asay before the shechita. And if you're going to say it happened la'ach shechita without a smicha, says you want la'ach shechita like coming by Elon. If the shechita asay that happened after the shechita, after the hafrosh and the shechita, that's not what the abaya was. The abaya was only after the hafrasha. If he was able to aveda after the hafrasha, but not after the shechita. Why don't we say that this is the piddush? Keep gabra. The person brings the ilah and he didn't do smicha. He was forgiven for the asay that he had done, and he's saved from punishment, and he's parted from another carbon. And this that it says in the Braisa, loy chiper, it's as if he wasn't forgiven. Kamishmaya means benegay to Hashem. Hashem is not happy. He didn't do the mitzvah min hamuvcha because the mitzvah min hamuvcha would have entailed that he did the smicha. And where do we find this concept that the Eibush is not happy? It wasn't done as a mitzvah min hamuvcha. It's not happy. We not learned in the Mishnah when they gave the taras of a mitzvah. It says the oil that remained on the palm of the kohen, he should place it on the head of the mitzvah. And the kohen will have a kapara for this person before Hashem. So it teaches us, even our son, if the kohen took the remaining oil and placed it on the head of the mitzvah keeper, the mitzvah became tar, like it says in the pasuk. But if he didn't place the oil on the head, he's not going to become tar. Those are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yechid argues, and he says, Shiyare mitzvah ein. It's only considered as a second, that's not the Ikar mitzvah. The giving the leftover, the oil and placing it on the head of the mitzvah is not the ik of the mitzvah. It's like this, it's called shiyarei mitzvah. The second part of the mitzvah, like it says v'hanoisa, which implies that that's not the ik shemen. It's only the shrine, the leftovers. Like we say, the leftover, the blood of the chatas that we place, we pour down in the yisod of his bayach. So it's not me'akim the korban. So therefore, bein nitam, whether he gave the oil on the head of the mizbeach, on the mitzvah or not, we're going to consider as if he wasn't forgiven. My kilo loy chipa. What does it mean? Kilo he wasn't mechupa. If you're going to say that he has to bring another carbon, meaning more oil and place on the head of the mitzvah. You just said it's not so. We said whether we place the oil on the head of the mitzvah or not, he's already tired. You have to say kippur legavra. The person himself was forgiven, but like kippur kabashmaya, meaning that he wasn't legabe Hashem. Hashem is not so happy with him because he didn't fulfill the mitzvah kitikuna, or the way it's supposed to be, which is with the oil smearing over his head. So Hachanami, so too in the Brais, when they gave the smicha, if he didn't do smicha, we say kippur. If the person is forgiven, and what does it mean? No kilo like kippur. It means that the person who did the aveda is not when he brought this carbon, he didn't do smicha. It's as if he wasn't. That the Eibush is not completely happy with him because he could have done better. He could have done mitzvah namavcha. Rava slugs up the Raya from Rav Yehuda from the Mishnah and the Goyim. There too, Loy Chipa is Kapesh Maya. Kamesh Maya. Says you want to hustle nami. There too, we can be mefarish Kippur like Kippur mamish. Rava is being the Eicher of Rav Yehuda that wanted to say that Loy Chipa means Kamesh Maya. He says, no. Rava says, I can slug it up and say, keep on like keep shute, keep matam b'hainis. With the blood that he placed on or the oil that he placed on the ear and on the thumb and the toe, that's what he was forgiven for, because that's where he placed the oil. Like keep him Matas Harish. But for the Matas Harish, he wasn't forgiven because he didn't place the oil. So too, we could explain by us that he wasn't mechuppah for the asay of smicha because he didn't do it until after the hafrasha. So the Gemara Tashma, come in here, and we'll answer the suffer from this brayse. The two kfasim that they brought on Chag HaShvuos as a couple, lamahim bayim. Says Gemara, for what purpose? Which chet do they come to be mechaper? So the Gemara stops a second. Kivsei atzeres shlamim. The kivsei atzeres, they're coming shlamim. How did Rabbi Shimon say later on at the end of his words that coming to forgive on Tumas Mikdash v'Kadasho? It's a shlamim, and the shlamim are not coming to be mechaper. Ella, we have to say seidei atzeres, not kivsei, but the goats of the Shvuos lamahim bayim. One are the two Sirich Hatois that we are mak b'chag HaShvuos. One as a chelik from the Kam Musaf, and the other one is a chelik from a Kam that they bring with the Shnei Alachem. Why are they brought? For which chet? So that, Rav Shimon said, lechap al tumas mikdash v'kadasho. For somebody who entered in the Beis HaMikdash while being tummy, or he ate kachim and while being tummy. That's what it's forgiving for. And he didn't become aware of that. So Rabbi Shimon asked another question: if the first blood was sprayed already on the mizbeach, and he was already forgiven for Tumas Mikdash v'Gadasho, by the Siyah Sheni Lama Karav, why did they sacrifice the second Siyah? He was already in the scupper. So only we have to say that the Siyah Sheni is coming to be Mechaper al Tumas Sha'ira Bein Zelazeh. on the tumah that happened between the first akrava and the second akrava. Emer Zmata say now, even though they were not over only in such a short time between one and first and second carbon, we have to be concerned. Maybe they did a sin in that short period of time. That's why they need another carbon. Like the Torah says, "Lahakar shnei sinim," to be mechapa on tuma, even that there was such a short span of time between the first and second carbon. So l'cheira, we should constantly bring kabbanas el shchiza kasu, and the Torah wasn't medactic on the yidden to be mechayiv them, require them to be with many kabbanas all the time, because the Torah had rachmanas on the moment shel yisrael. So from this brayso we can prove that the hasei that came after the afrasha, you have the hasei lach afrasha v'chakam mechapra. Here by the Sidi Atzeres, the second story is mechap on the tumah that happened after the hafrasha, because both Sridim were already separated the day before. And the second one is coming to be mechaper on the tumah that happened between the first akrava and the second akrava. So the Gemara shlugs that up. You're right. If that they were separated at the same time, then you have a raya that's mechaper even for the avedas after the hafrasha. But what our case is talking about, in which even did the Torah require a second saraya, you're going to hafreshinu b'zachazeh, that they separated these two seidim not at the same time. So you find that the second saraya is machap on the tumah that happened before he was mafresh, because they didn't do it in the same time. In fact, you want to the chiksu b'zachazeh. In fact, is it possible to establish the pasuk that it was only in a case where the two sidim were bezach hazeh? I mean, every year the Torah requires to be makar two sidim on the Yom Tov of Shavuos. So the Torah didn't give any special requirements how to separate them. It's mashma that even if they were separated bevas achas at the same time. So if there were vasachas, so then you have a raya that it's that the carbon forgives even for the assays after for the avedis after the afrasha. And where do we sagni? Papa slugs up this raya. The answers this tchiyam. Papa kabbanis tzibur. You're bringing a raya from kabbanis tzibur of the shnei asidim, which is that was brought for on Chag HaShavuos. That's a kabbanis tzibur. Shani Kabbalah Sibur, the last Bezdin, Kamas Naleim. Kabbalah Sibur is different than a Kabbalah Yachid. Because das Bezdin is that the Hafrasha, what the Kahanim did for the Seirim doesn't happen till right by the sacrificing. In order that it should be able to be Mechapa on any tumah that will happen till that moment. So it's not so Kabbalah Sibur is not happening again. Like we said that the hafrasha shouldn't be chal, that separation is not going to be considered as a separation till right before the akrava, that it should be forgiven for every tumah that will happen till the akrava. Where do we see that lebbez masnaleim is like built in that way? Can have Yehuda Mashmol. Have Yehuda Mashmol kabbalah sibir sakin meishach l'mashein. The shchita, it designates what kind of a carbon should be. We know, like the Eilos Tamid, that halacha was that you took the money only from Nisan till Nisan for that year. Any money that came after Nisan, that money was for the new karbanis. So let's say he designated a carbon, and we don't know from which money it came from. So he l'chatchila is designated for a tamid, and if it's not going to be as a tamid because it came from the old money. If it came from the old money, and you're in the next year, then it turns into oilas nadava, which we call kayetz hamizbeach, So Bezdin has the right that the moment when he's putting the knife to shech the carbon, to change it, to say, oh, this is not a tamid, because this behema that we are now put away is from the old money from the previous year. So this carbon automatically turns into Eilus Nadava, Eilus Nadava or Kaitz Lamizbeach. So you see, Bezdin has rules that they fix in right at the time at the Shechita. That's when is the Hafrasha is considered as the Hafrasha, right at the time of the Shechita. Does Rav Shimon hold late Bezdin Masna Aleim? Like we just explained, that Bezdin has like a fixed rule that the Hafrasha is designated right at the time at the Hakrava, right at the Shechita. And it's like built in that way. Tvinim that was not for the tzibur, it was money left over for the. It was considered as money for the new year, which is oilas nedava. Says Gemara, Rav Shimon ain't nivdim tmimim. They can be redeemed tmimim, meaning if this behemoth was from the old money and it cannot be used as a tmimim, so then this behemoth, so according to Rav Shimon, you cannot redeem it as a tamid. It was already designated as a tamid, so you have to let it. You have to wait till it gets a mum. But according to Chachamim is saying no, because till the shechita, Bezdin has the rule that it could, it could be designated for whatever they want, so they can redeem it as tmimim, even though b'derech klal a kam is not nivda when it's without a mum, when it's tam without a mum, because the kedush sakuf of a kam tamim is only nivda through a mum, but here lev Bezdin must not lay him, meaning Bezdin like fixed in the rule that till the actual shechita, as long as it wasn't yeshach, then they have the right to redeem the money. According to Chachamim, as long as you don't need it now it cannot be used as a tmidin because it's old money, so it doesn't have the kedush saguf, and therefore you can redeem it and use that money. But according to Rav Shimon says no, that the kedush saguf came on it the moment that he turned it in. He made it into a tamid, and then they found that it cannot be a tamid. But the kedush sakuf had remained on it, and he has to wait till it gets a mum. So he said, Shimon doesn't hold of lev Bezdin of Masna Aleim, that Bezdin could fix in a rule and say that the kedush, there's no kedush sakuf on it. So we could say, according to Reb Shimon, he doesn't hold by the two Seidim that the second Sarir is not considered a hafrasha till mamish the shechita. He doesn't hold of la bezn masna aleim benegate in general. So benegate to the second Sarir that he brought of the Shnei Surim for Chag HaShavuos, we're not going to say the second Sarir is considered as hafrasha. It's not chal till mamish by the hakrava. Hey. And another kasha, even if you're going to say that you can explain the pasuk, that is talking about dafki when they separate, they separate the two sidim bazeh, not in the same time. Says the Gemara from the Divrei Amarayim from the following words that we're going to bring down. It seems like that's not the piddush. Rabbi Yirmi had asked a shayla for Rabbi Zera, seidei atzera shekibel dam Mishnei Kaises, the Sidi Yatzeres, the goats that they brought on Shavuos, that they received the blood right after the Shechita. It seems like they was slaughtered at the same time, but the blood was put into two cases. And the blood of the one case was already sprayed on the Mizbeach. Why do we need the second case for? If the first case already forgave for the Aveda of Tumah, what do I need another case for? So the Gemara, so Rab Zera answered, the case Sheni is Al Tumah Shahida Bein Zikah Shel Zeh Lezeh. on the tumah that happened right after the first zika. So that's what the second zika is coming to forgive. So from the tshuva of Rabbi Zera, it's mashma that the spraying of the blood of the sar is machap on the tumah that hit meaning the sar of the second sar on the tumah that happened after the first hafrasha. That happened after the hafrasha. So not between the zikah, but I'm sorry, meaning that happened, avedas that happened after hafrasha, even though it's after the shechita. So ad kan le'makameh ba'yilei say nelach hashchita. Here the whole suffix was only if the sar is going to be mechaper on a say, meaning on the tumah that happened after shechita. Here we're talking about after shechita because we're talking about the blood, between the blood of one and the second case of blood. That if a tumah happened. I'll say the lach hafrasha, but when you're talking about the say, the tumah that happened before the shechita, but after the hafrasha, that we weren't late coming by late. We didn't even have a suffix. It seems like it was so pashut that the sair will be mechaper on those avedas that happened after hafrasha. The whole shayla was after the shechita. Says Yimon, you have no raya. Maybe he was saying it as in Timtzalema. First of all, we don't know even after the hafrasha if it will forgive or not. And if you say it will forgive, this sorry will forgive even for the avedas after the hafrasha. The shayla was, how about if after the shechita and aveda happened after the shechita? Will the second sorry be mechap on the first? But we don't have an eye for the hafrasha either because they were both part of the shayla